Congratulations, you've made it. You are a Stormtrooper now. You signed the papers, swore loyalty to the Empire, and now look at you. Shiny white armor, a blaster in your hands, and statistically speaking, you probably won't hit a thing with it. And it's fine, nobody else can either. You'll fit right in. Feels good, right? But relax, enjoy this moment, because the first time you find yourself standing on a Star Destroyer deck and Darth Vader walks by, that's when reality hits harder than your blaster ever will. Welcome to the Empire. So, maybe you were broke, bored, or maybe your planet didn't have much going on except sand, and you thought, free meals and a shiny uniform? Why not? That's how it starts for most recruits. Nobody grows up dreaming of polishing boots and memorizing the Emperor's speeches, but those hollow posters make it look good. A smiling officer, a line of troopers marching through the sunset, looks like purpose. You step inside the recruitment office and there's a guy in a pressed grey uniform who shakes your hand like he already owns your soul. And well, he kind of does. The paperwork is endless. You sign your name a dozen times, swear loyalty to the Emperor, and before you realise it, they've already taken your name away. You're not Dan or Lyra anymore, you're TK something. Doesn't matter what number, they all sound the same after a while. They ship you off on a transport full of other hopefuls, everyone wearing the same tired face. You just sit there, listening to the engines and wondering if this was a mistake. Your first stop, Carida. Big Imperial Academy world, famous for turning ordinary people into miserable soldiers. The whole planet is like a gym mixed with a prison. You can tell it's designed by someone who hates comfort. The instructors start yelling the second you step off the ramp. You don't even know what you did wrong yet, but apparently you're already a disappointment. Training's brutal. They say it's about discipline, but it mostly feels like creative torture. Wake up before sunrise, run until you can't feel your legs, crawl under electrified fences, shoot targets that shock you if you miss. If you survive the day, they reward you with grey protein paste that tastes like wet cardboard. They say it's packed with nutrients. Everywhere you go, you hear the same slogan blasting through speakers. For the Empire, for peace, for order. At first you repeat it. Later, you just mouth the words. There's something funny about how everyone says the same lines, but nobody actually knows what they mean. You'll meet some old clone veterans at these academies. They hang around as instructors. Most of them came from Kamino, back in the Clone Wars. They don't talk much, but when they do, you listen. They'll tell you about how soldiers used to be bred for loyalty, how every man next to you was literally your brother. You can tell they miss that. They look at the new recruits and see a bunch of strangers pretending to be soldiers. And they're not wrong. The Empire replaced clones because they got too expensive, too independent. Humans are cheaper. The cloning facilities were shut down after Kamino's uprising, and the Empire swept that story under the rug like it never happened. But some of the clones still linger in the ranks, half broken, trying to fit into a system that moved on without them. You learn fast that individuality isn't encouraged. You try to joke during drills, and the instructor yells until you regret being born. You try to show initiative, and they call it arrogance. Basically, the goal is to blend in so well that nobody remembers your face, which is funny because soon enough, you won't have a visible one anyway. After months of running, shooting, and getting yelled at, they finally hand you your first set of armor. It comes in a crate with your ID number stamped on it, like a delivery box. You open it, and it gleams under the lights. Smooth white plates, black undersuit, helmet with those dark lenses that make you look like you haven't slept in years. You think, alright, this is it. The thing's heavier than it looks. The inside smells like plastic and sweat. The filters barely work, the visor fogs every time you breathe, and the speakers make everyone sound like they're talking through a tin can. You try to adjust the neck seal and nearly choke yourself. And the instructors, they love watching recruits struggle. Get used to it, they say. You'll be wearing it for the rest of your career. You learn to move in it, even though it squeaks every time you turn. You learn to eat in it, kind of. You learn to sleep sitting up because taking it off is a hassle. Eventually, it feels like part of your skin. That's when you realize what the armor really does. It erases you. Once the helmet's on, everyone's the same height, same shape, same faceless grunt. The Empire's dream come true. And to be fair, the armor does look cool. Civilians see it and step aside. Kids stare. You finally get a sense of power. The kind you never had back home. People don't question you when you're dressed like that. It's strange how much respect a white bucket can earn you. The blasters are another story. They hand you an E11, the classic Imperial rifle, Compact, shiny, and supposedly standard issue. You'll find out fast that half of them jam, and the other half shoot about as straight as a drunken gonk droid. It's not really your fault when you miss. The E11 is built for intimidation, not precision. The Empire figured fear travels faster than accuracy. There are other weapons floating around too. Heavier DLT-19s for suppression, SE-14 are pistols for close quarters, even the occasional flamethrower or thermal detonator if your unit's lucky. The instructors explain how the Empire mass produces everything through CNR and Blastech contracts. That's why your blaster and your ship and your rations all come from the same few corporations. The military-industrial complex, Star Wars Edition. After training, you get your first posting. Nobody asks where you want to go. They assign you a sector, and you go. Could be Lothal, could be Tatooine, could be some mining world so remote it doesn't even show up on maps. The ship that takes you there looks like a flying lunchbox. You squeeze in with 100 other troopers, shoulder to shoulder, and for the next few days, you breathe the same stale air and wonder which one of you is going to snap first. The atmosphere on those transports is always the same, half boredom, half anxiety. You're about to become part of something huge, but you have no clue what that means yet. When the ship finally lands, you realize every Imperial base looks identical. Grey walls, dim lights, and that faint smell of metal polish and ration powder. You could close your eyes and not know what planet you're on. That's how the Empire keeps everyone obedient, make every place feel the same, so nobody gets too attached to home. Your commander gives you the standard pep talk. You are the face of the Emperor. Citizens must see order when they see you. The first few times you hear it, it sounds inspiring. After the 50th, it just sounds like background noise. Your daily routine kicks in quick. Wake up early, shine the armor until you can see your reflection. Eat breakfast paste, attend inspection, patrol, repeat. On paper it sounds disciplined. In reality it's a lot of standing around pretending to look busy while you try not to pass out from the heat inside the armor. When you're off duty, there's not much to do. The garrison mess hall serves the same flavourless stew every night, and the entertainment consoles always loop the same Imperial news feeds. Once in a while, someone sneaks in bootleg holofilms, old Republic comedies or pod racing highlights, just to feel normal for an hour. You laugh quietly so the cameras don't catch it. You also start hearing stories, rumours about Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer. Nobody really knows who he is, but everyone's terrified of him. Some say he's more machine than man. Others swear they saw him choke a guy without touching him. You don't know if any of it's true. And honestly, you don't want to find out. The rule's simple. If Vader shows up, stand perfectly still and pray you're invisible. Despite everything, there are moments that feel alright. Marching in formation with hundreds of troopers, the sound of boots hitting metal floors in sync. There's something hypnotic about it. You feel like you're part of something larger than yourself. For a few seconds, that illusion almost feels good. Then reality creeps back. You realize you're stationed on a planet where the locals glare at you. The Empire calls it maintaining order, but what you're really doing is scaring farmers and checking cargo crates for contraband. You tell yourself it's important work, keeps the galaxy stable. Deep down, you know you're just babysitting fear. Still, the pay's decent, the food's predictable, and the armor hides your expression when you roll your eyes. That's worth something. If you hang around long enough, you start to understand the psychology of it. The Empire's genius isn't its weapons, it's the illusion of control. Everything runs on routine. Same meals, same slogans, same uniforms. You stop questioning it because there's never time to think, and that's how they keep everyone in line. Not through violence, but through exhaustion. The funny thing is, most Stormtroopers aren't evil, they're just stuck. The Empire makes sure you don't have anywhere else to go. Your entire world becomes corridors, orders and armor. You lose touch with everything outside of that. After a while, the silence inside your helmet becomes normal. Sometimes you think about leaving. Then you remember the deserter stories, how they get hunted down by ISB agents, how their faces end up on wanted boards. You realize freedom isn't worth much if it ends with you floating in space. So you stay. You stand at checkpoints, you salute officers, you keep your armor polished. Life in the Empire isn't heroic, but it's predictable. And predictability, weirdly enough, feels safe. You ever wonder how the Empire managed to fill half the galaxy with white-armored soldiers who all walk, talk, and shoot the same way? It's not luck, it's infrastructure. The Empire built an entire machine just to mass-produce obedience and called it training. It built a galaxy-sized system for manufacturing obedience. If you ever saw the scale of it, you'd almost admire the insanity. After you graduate from your first camp, you start hearing about the rest. The whole network of Imperial Academies. Turns out, Carida was just one cog in the biggest military machine the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire had hundreds of training worlds, scattered from the core to the outer rim. Some planets were basically boot camps. Others were more like indoctrination universities with cafeterias that served ideology for breakfast. There was Rathal, the famous one. The Holonews called it the cradle of the Empire. That's where they bred the officers, future governors, fleet admirals, the people who'd eventually boss everyone else around. The place had marble halls and real coffee. You could tell who went there by their posture. Straight back, clipped tone, and that permanent expression of someone who's never been wrong in their life. Then there was Koralag, which tried to imitate Rathal, but mostly produced mid-level administrators and Stormtrooper officers who thought a clipboard was a weapon. Pref Spelt 4 was for the Navy. Pilots, navigators, mechanics. Half the graduates ended up flying TIEs, the other half ended up parts of them. And of course, there were lesser-known worlds, Arcanis, Lothal, Vardos, each with its own flavour of misery. You could tell what a planet trained by how the recruits looked. Arcanis produced stoic faces and tight jawlines. Lothal gave you the ones with tired eyes and dirty boots. Vardos troopers had the cleanest armour you've ever seen. They polished even when asleep. The Empire didn't pick planets at random either. They built these academies as statements. Carida had brutal terrain to break recruits physically. Rathal had statues of the Emperor, taller than city blocks, to break them mentally. Lothal's academy sat right above a farming settlement to remind everyone who they were protecting. Every skyline came with a reminder, you're here to serve, and it worked. Entire sectors revolved around their local academies. Families would brag if one of their kids got accepted. My son's serving the Emperor. They'd leave out the part where he's sleeping in a metal bunk with 6 roommates and being screamed at for blinking wrong. Image was everything. The Empire understood that better than anyone. What most people don't realise is how corporate it all was. The Empire loved contracts. Blastech, Sienna Fleet Systems, Quats Drive Yards. These companies didn't just make ships and weapons, they sponsored parts of the academies. You'd see banners during graduation ceremonies. Proud partner in galactic stability. It's wild to think that even fascism had brand deals. The result was this weird mix of militarism and bureaucracy. Every academy bragged about its output numbers. Rathal boasted 94% graduation rates. Carida bragged about operational efficiency, which was code for we only lose 20% of cadets per cycle. Somewhere, there's probably an accountant who got promoted for balancing those numbers. Then you had the propaganda. The Empire loved visual learning. Every academy had mandatory Imperial loyalty sessions, basically film night, but instead of comedies you got holovids titled things like Harmony Through Strength or The Republic's Fall, a cautionary tale. The soundtracks were incredible though, big brass, dramatic drums. You couldn't watch one without walking out humming the theme. That was the trick. Make you proud first, question later. Cadets competed to quote speeches word for word. There was always that one guy who knew entire paragraphs from the Emperor's address on the creation of the Empire. He'd recite it during inspection like poetry, and the officers loved him for it. Everyone else quietly hated him. It wasn't all discipline and ideology though. There was a social layer too, a strange mix of high school drama and military hierarchy. Each academy had internal cliques. Rathal grads looked down on everyone. Pref Spelt cadets thought ground troops were expendable assets. Carida veterans laughed at both because at least they'd seen mud. And beneath all that snobbery, you'd still find shared misery binding everyone together. Nothing creates unity like collectively hating breakfast paste. If you wanted to understand how the Empire thought, you just had to look at how it handled failure. In the Old Republic, if a cadet washed out, they could try again or transfer somewhere else. Under the Empire, failure meant reassignment, mining, sanitation, maybe food transport. Basically, the Empire believed everyone could serve. Some people just did it without pay. They called it labour contribution. Real uplifting. They experimented a lot too. Some academies used droid instructors. The theory was that droids couldn't show bias or fatigue. The result was disaster. Turns out nothing motivates human recruits less than being insulted by a toaster. They scrapped that program pretty quick, though a few still lingered in remote worlds, giving motivational speeches with static voices like, "Be the best trooper you can be." The Empire even tried indoctrination through simulation. Hollow rooms where cadets would fight rebel avatars that looked suspiciously heroic. The programmers got replaced after that. The next version featured rebels who hissed like animals. Subtlety was never their strength. The weirdest part was how normal it all seemed from the inside. When you're there, the daily grind makes sense. There's order, there's food, there's structure. You don't question the slogans on the wall because they're the only words you see every day. After a while, serve the Empire sounds less like a command and more like a heartbeat. Of course, every academy had its unofficial traditions. On Coralag, cadets swapped out the brass band's recordings with cantina jazz before inspection. On Arcanis, they played a betting game called Guess the Punishment, where you tried to predict what creative task the officers would assign next. My favourite stories from Lothal. During power shortages, the cadets there used their helmet lights to project shadow shows on the dorm walls. Whole plays acted out in silence. Imagine a room full of future Stormtroopers making finger puppets. Even in a regime built on control, people found ways to be silly. The Empire also had what it called the Loyalty Exchange Program. They'd shuffle recruits between academies mid-training to encourage unity. In practice, it was a test. You'd get dropped onto a new planet, surrounded by strangers, and they'd see how well you conformed. If you adapted fast, you were Imperial material. If not, you disappeared into administrative duty, the polite way of saying desk forever. Grand Moffs loved visiting training worlds to show the press how prepared the troops were. You'd see a line of tired cadets standing at attention, while some pompous officer walked past, pretending to care. There was always one journalist asking, "What makes the Imperial soldier great?" The answer never changed. Discipline. They never asked, "At what cost?" One thing that kept morale from collapsing was rivalry. Every year, the academies held the Imperial War Games. And this actually comes from legend sources. It's mentioned in the old Imperial sourcebook and the X-Wing, Wedge's Gamble novel. Basically, a galaxy-wide tournament where squads competed in tactics, blaster accuracy, and endurance drills. Winners got medals, sometimes even field promotions. Losers got to keep breathing, which honestly was prize enough. The event was a big deal. The HoloNet broadcast snippets to civilians to prove that the next generation of heroes was ready. Behind the cameras, half the participants were too exhausted to stand straight. Sometimes you'd get an instructor who quietly told the truth. One old sergeant at Coralag told his unit, "You're not here to win wars. You're here to make the Empire look organised." Nobody reported him. Everyone already knew. By the time a recruit graduated, the transformation was complete. They didn't need mind chips or brainwashing machines, just repetition. The Empire's real weapon was routine. You eat, march, sleep, repeat, until it becomes who you are. That's why Stormtroopers look the same everywhere. They're not clones, but they might as well be products from the same assembly line. The academies didn't only feed the military, they fed everything else too. Local economies revolved around them. Merchants sold polished boots and Imperial-approved soap. Parents moved closer, hoping to visit their kids, though visits were never allowed. Even nearby schools used Imperial curricula. Kids grew up drawing pictures of Stormtroopers instead of animals. The Empire called it early integration. Every so often you'd hear whispers about cadets who vanished overnight, not for failure, but for special recruitment. No one said where they went. Some claimed they became Death Troopers or ISB agents. Others said it was code for medical testing. Nobody joked about it out loud. You start to realize how efficient the system is. Billions of people, all funneled through the same process, all taught the same version of history. That's the secret to the Empire's control. It doesn't need everyone to believe, it just needs everyone to behave. You know how people say they don't make them like they used to? Well, in the Empire, that was literally true. The clones were the last generation of soldiers built to care. Everything after that was built to obey. When you joined up, you probably still saw a few of them around. The instructors called them veteran consultants. Everyone else just called them Clones, they moved differently. Straighter backs, sharper eyes. You could tell who'd fought in the Clone Wars and who'd been taught about them from a training holo. So what happened? Why did the Empire toss aside a whole army that had already won a war? Well, as I said earlier, it started with politics and profit. Clones were expensive. Kamino charged the Republic a fortune for each trooper. Equipment, food, medical care, accelerated growth, the whole package. After the Republic became the Empire, the Senate that still sort of existed started complaining about cost overruns. Tarkin, ever the accountant of cruelty, convinced the Emperor that conscripts were cheaper and easier to replace. In his mind, loyalty could be trained faster than it could be bred. But there was a deeper reason: independence. The clones had minds. They were obedient, sure, but too many of them had seen too much. They'd served Jedi, they'd questioned orders during the war, and a few even refused to execute Order 66. For an emperor who wanted absolute control, that was a nightmare waiting to happen. Canon actually shows this in The Bad Batch. The Kaminoans tried to protect their contracts by creating enhanced units, experimental batches meant to prove they could still innovate. Instead, they proved to the Empire that clones could think for themselves. And that sealed Kamino's fate. Within a few short years, the Kamino Uprising began. Some clone units rebelled after discovering the Empire planned to shut down the facilities. The details differ depending on the source. In Legends, it's a full-scale clone-on-clone civil war. In canon, it's more political, but the result's the same. The Empire bombed Tipica City into the ocean. The cloning labs were wiped off the map, and the surviving Kaminoans were retired into Imperial custody. That was the symbolic death of the Republic Army. From there, the Empire turned to what it called the Stormtrooper Corps, an army made of regular humans, trained by ex-clones, until the clones themselves faded out. You'll still meet people who think Stormtroopers were clones. Can't blame them. The armor looks the same. That was deliberate. The Empire kept the white armor design because it sold an image. From a distance, every soldier still looked identical, which kept the illusion of the old efficiency without the price tag. What nobody outside the system saw was how messy that transition was. The first wave of non-clone troopers, the so-called Generation 1 Stormtroopers, were a disaster. They had inconsistent training, cheap gear, and morale that vanished faster than their pay. The Empire called it growing pains. The instructors called it progress. The clones just called it sad. Some clones actually tried to help the new recruits, teaching them tactics, explaining things like cover fire, squad movement, and basic empathy. The officers hated that. They wanted soldiers who didn't think like individuals, and the clones were terrible at pretending to be soulless. Eventually, the old trainers were replaced with civilians who'd never fought a real battle but could recite regulations like scripture. Behind all this was the Imperial Bureau of Standards, the people who decided what armor looked like, what rifles every unit carried, even how soldiers were supposed to stand during inspections. You could say the clone army was designed by scientists. The Stormtrooper army was designed by committee. The Empire started rewriting the history of the Clone Wars almost immediately. The Holonet documentaries began describing clones as experimental soldiers that served their purpose. Jedi betrayal became the headline. Clone heroism got cut in the edit. If you joined a few years later, you wouldn't even know what Kamino was. Your instructors would say the clones were early models, efficient but flawed, replaced by true Imperial citizens. It was wild hearing that while a clone sergeant with one good eye was still limping around the barracks, the Empire had contracts with half a dozen Outer Rim recruitment worlds. Poor systems sent their young men in exchange for tax breaks and grain shipments. To them, it wasn't oppression, it was opportunity. The Empire knew exactly how to sell stability. The clones who stayed in service began aging out. Accelerated growth meant most hit middle age within a decade. A few lucky ones got reassigned to administrative work. Some just disappeared. The Bad Batch hinted that many were quietly retired on Imperial pensions. Others weren't so lucky. The Empire didn't like veterans with opinions. It's funny, the Republic built clones to end chaos, and the Empire buried them to erase guilt. When you walk through an Imperial base years later, you'll notice not a single mural, not a single plaque mentioning the Grand Army. Even the armor pattern numbers changed. Phase 1, Phase 2, those designations vanished from official databases. History literally got renamed. Still, the legacy lingered. Every Stormtrooper training manual was based on clone doctrine. Marching formations, rank titles, even the blaster handling procedures came straight from clone manuals, with the serial numbers filed off. So in a way, every Stormtrooper carried a little bit of Camino in their stride. They just didn't know it. And somewhere deep down, the Empire knew clones were better. That's why they kept experimenting. In Legends, you have projects like Sparty cloning on Kartau, attempts to mass-grow troops using flash imprinting instead of childhood training. It ended badly. Unpredictable loyalty, mental instability, you name it. Canon mirrors that with the Mount Tantiss program. You see it in the Bad Batch Season 3. Even decades later, Palpatine still tried to recreate what Kamino had perfected, just with more control and less conscience. As for the Kaminoans themselves, the ones who weren't killed were taken by the Empire to work on secret projects. Nala Se, one of the head scientists, ended up imprisoned under Imperial supervision. The rest of her species scattered. The planet that once created life became a monument to efficiency. Nothing left to maintain, nothing left to question. Occasionally, you'd run into an old clone instructor still hanging around. He'd spot your armor, shake his head, and say something like, "We used to polish ours because we cared." You'd laugh, but it stayed with you. Most of them were just tired. They'd fought for a republic that didn't exist, obeyed orders they couldn't question, and outlived their purpose. The Empire didn't have a word for that kind of tragedy, only a form to file. By the time the Death Star was finished, the last registered clone units had been disbanded. Not executed, not discharged, just erased from records. The Stormtrooper Corps became the face of the Empire. The myth was complete. What makes it eerie is how smooth the transition looked. To civilians, the soldiers in white armor never changed. Same look, same discipline, same fear. The Empire turned an entire generation of thinking men into a brand, then mass-produced it with cheaper parts. You can almost respect the efficiency, almost. The armor gleams, the helmet looks like something out of a holodrama, the rifle feels heavy enough to mean business. Then you try wearing it for a full shift, and you realize the Empire wasn't trying to make you unstoppable. It was trying to make you uncomfortable enough to never think too much. That's the truth about Imperial design. Every piece of gear, from the helmet to the boots, serves the same purpose. Keep you alive just long enough to finish the job, and keep you obedient the whole time you're doing it. Let's start with the armor. They say Stormtrooper armor is state-of-the-art. Blast-resistant plastoid composite over sealed black body glove. Sounds impressive, right? In reality, it's a white plastic shell that creaks when you breathe and traps enough heat to slow cook you on desert planets. The design traces back to the old Clone Trooper Phase 2 suits, which actually worked better. The Empire saw the price tag, cut a few corners, and called it an upgrade. The clone suits had internal cooling systems, temperature regulators, and environmental seals that could handle vacuum or acid rain. The Stormtrooper version technically still has seals, but they're more like suggestions. You step into a sandstorm on Tatooine and you'll be shaking sand out of your undersuit for a week. There's a reason sand troopers wear those extra backpack units. They're basically carrying spare air filters because the regular ones can't handle dust for more than 5 minutes. The helmet is a whole other level of love-hate. From the outside, it looks intimidating. Smooth lines, blank stare, that skull-like frown built into the faceplate. Inside, it's like wearing a soundproof fishbowl. You get used to it, but it's never clear if the helmet's protecting you or isolating you. Maybe both. There's a reason for that design, though. Imperial engineers wanted helmets that depersonalize the soldier. If you can't see a face, you can't humanize it. The Empire didn't want soldiers who connected with civilians. It wanted silhouettes of authority. Every identical white helmet is a psychological weapon. People don't look at you and see you. They see Empire. Inside, you do get a few helpful tools. A HUD with range data, built-in comm receiver, even a low light mode when it works. Half the time, the software glitches and you end up seeing static until you smack the side of your head like an old holo projector. You're not supposed to do that, but everyone does. There's also a target assist mode, but it's useless unless you like aiming 2 centimeters to the left of where you're actually shooting. Speaking of shooting, the most common weapon you'd see was still the E11 blaster rifle, a Blastech design built from leftover Clone War specs. Not that it was the best, it just made bookkeeping easier. The Empire bought the license outright and ordered millions at once, then simplified the internals so they could be built faster and cheaper. By the time those rifles reached the front, most of the precision parts had been replaced with hollow castings. That's why half of them rattled when you shook them. The logic was pure Imperial efficiency. One rifle that works well enough for every climate, every soldier, every factory. Each unit used the same Tabanagas cartridges, the same charge packs, the same cleaning kits. If something broke, you didn't repair it, you swapped it. A soldier with a working gun was cheaper than a gunsmith with opinions. Outside the standard issue, there was a whole catalogue of specialised weapons. DLT-19 T-21S showed up in Frontier units. They hit like a land speeder, but overheated after a few bursts. Officers preferred the SE-14R pistol, mostly because it looked sleek in holophotos. Scouts carried lighter E-22s, twin-barreled versions made for hit-and-run work, while the rare A280 rifles, later stolen by rebels, reminded everyone what Blastech could have built if the Empire had paid for quality. Then there were the specialists, flamethrowers for incinerator units, sonic rifles for crowd control, ion weapons for droid suppression. Most of them came from the same two corporations, Blastech and CNR, whose contracts basically wrote Imperial law. If you were in uniform, odds were your blaster, your armor, and even the bolts holding your bunk together were made by one of those companies. And that wasn't coincidence. Standardization was strategy. A single supply model meant complete economic control. T-Banner gas shipments, power cell production, even blaster grease, all of it flowed through Imperial channels. You couldn't rebel if the only people who sold you ammunition were the ones you'd be rebelling against. There's a running joke among veterans. The Empire didn't win with superior weapons. It won by making sure everyone used the same bad ones. From the outside, it looked like unity. From the inside, it felt like monopoly. Now, about the rest of the gear. Every trooper's loadout includes a few standard items. A utility belt packed with power cells, thermal detonators, ration capsules, comlinks, and a grappling hook that looks impressive but breaks if you weigh more than a crate of fruit. There's also a survival kit. Basically, a tiny metal box with a water filter, a heat tab, and a single-use blanket that's thinner than paper. The official manual says it's enough to sustain a soldier for 72 hours in hostile conditions. Most troopers call it a fancy way to die slower. The armor's black undersuit, called the body glove, is supposed to regulate temperature and provide basic protection from vacuum exposure. It does neither particularly well. After long deployments, the thing starts to smell like a swamp inside a locker. There's no polite way to describe it. Clone undersuits at least had modular cooling systems. Stormtrooper ones are just fabric and faith. Then there's the boots. The Empire loves symmetry, so they made both boots identical, no left or right. Saves manufacturing costs. Ruins ankles galaxy-wide. The tread pattern works great on starship decks, less so on ice or sand. Snowtroopers had to add extra wraps and heating coils just to keep their toes attached. Each specialized trooper variant had its own cursed version of standard armor. Snowtroopers wore insulated layers that turned into ovens in moderate climates. Scout troopers got lighter armor and visors you could actually see through. Lucky devils. Death troopers had the opposite problem. Armor so heavy and tech-filled that the vocoders distorted their speech into metallic gibberish. Looked cool, sounded like they were talking underwater. The vehicles were another story. You probably know the big ones. AT-ATS, Imperial Troop Transports. They were impressive, towering symbols of power, and absolute nightmares for the people inside them. A TAT pilots operated from cramped cockpits with barely any visibility. If the targeting computer went down, you were basically driving a skyscraper blindfolded. The crew compartments in the legs, no seatbelts. Half the Walker casualties weren't from blaster fire, they were from turbulence. The Empire's air support wasn't much kinder. The TIE series, made by CNR Fleet Systems, had no shields, no hyperdrives, and no eject systems. The idea was simple. If a TIE pilot bails, that's wasteful. That same philosophy trickled down to troopers. Equipment didn't need to protect you. just make you look like you didn't need protecting. Even the comlink system was built to frustrate individuality. All Stormtrooper units used encrypted channels tied to command relays. You couldn't talk directly to another squad without clearance. Orders went down the chain, not sideways. You could be 5 meters from another trooper and still have to wait for an officer to approve the channel. There's this funny thing about gear though. No matter how standardized it is, troopers always find ways to personalize it. Some scratch little symbols into the inside of their helmets, squad logos, jokes, initials. Others secretly modify their visors for better vision or tape their lucky trinkets inside armor plates. None of it's allowed, but it's the only individuality you've got left. You can't change your orders, but you can paint a tiny star inside your helmet and know it's yours. All of that gear, every imperfect rifle, fogged up visor, and loose boot, was part of a larger design. The Empire didn't need perfect soldiers, it needed replaceable ones. If your armor made you anonymous, and your weapon made you dependent on the system that supplied it, then you'd never think about leaving it. You were physically tied to Imperial industry. Your safety depended on it. And that's the dark genius of the Empire. Even your equipment was propaganda. White armor made you a symbol of order. Standard blasters made your unit look unified. Cheap production made expansion possible. Everything about Imperial gear screamed power from the outside and discomfort from the inside. And that contrast was the point. You ever walk into a place so big it makes you feel small, no matter who you are? That's what stepping onto the Death Star feels like. It isn't a station, it's a world. From orbit, the thing looks almost elegant. Perfect sphere, brushed steel skin, a soft glint from the local star. Then your eyes hit the crater, the super laser dish, and all the elegance turns into purpose. That's not architecture, that's a warning. They call it the DS-1 Orbital Battle Station on paperwork. You'll hear officers drop names like Tarkin and Krennic when they talk about who pushed it over the finish line. Construction whispers point to Geonosis for the bones and years of hush-hush work spread across secret yards. The files are redacted to the point of comedy. What isn't redacted? The scale. You're living inside something on the order of hundreds of millions of cubic meters of corridors, bays, shafts, and reactors. Think approximately 160 kilometers across. Big enough that you could march all day on one deck and never see daylight or a curve in a hallway. The layout is a monster's anatomy. That equatorial trench is the highway. Main hangars, cargo spines, service tugs, intake doors that swallow freighters by the platoon. Above and below, the interior is stacked in repeating rings and sectors. Command and fire control up in the north, heavy security and detention blocks nearer the core. Habitat decks in repeating grids and deep engineering sunk so far down you swear the gravity feels heavier near the reactor spires. Navigation is need to know, lifts refuse to go where your clearance says you shouldn't, and some wayfinding panels conveniently forget destinations. That's not a glitch, that's control. Crew numbers are the kind you round off because the exact figure makes people dizzy. You hear over 1 million personnel tossed around in briefings. Navy, Army, Techs, Med, Admin. And that's before counting the droids, which are everywhere and never sleep. Stormtroopers, whole garrisons, plural, tens of thousands, enough to lock down entire sectors of the station without calling upstairs. You get used to the rhythm, white armor in waves, black tunics moving like a school of fish, and the occasional ISB shadow gliding by with no rank on the chest and way too much rank in the room. The sound is the first habit you pick up, a low, constant drone from the hypermatter reactors and cooling loops. You feel it in your ribs. Floors are polished to a cult standard because cleanliness is discipline here, and discipline is doctrine. The station hates shadows, uniform light, uniform temperature, uniform air. Even laughter feels too loud, like it might trigger an intercom apology from someone you can't see. Quarters are copy-paste boxes, bunk, locker, wall console, sleep shift, lights that dim a little and never fully go dark. Officers get viewports if they win the lottery. The rest of us get a holofeed that boots to the same propaganda loop. The Emperor's vision, order through strength, the usual greatest hits playlist. Logistics is a religion. The equatorial intake breathes megatons of tabana, coolant, rations, uniforms, and parts. Waste runs the other way through grinders, recyclers, and the famous compactors everyone jokes about until they draw that watch and see how fast the walls move. Weapons? Pick a number that sounds unreasonable, and you're close. The surface is studded with thousands of heavy turbo lasers and ion cannon emplacements, with lighter batteries filling every gap your finger lands on in a schematic. Tractor beam projectors sit like fishhooks around the hull, invisible until a freighter tries to be clever and stops being clever. TIE wings hang from the hangar walls like folded knives. You can lose count by the squadron. Nobody outside the right badge cluster gets close to the super laser bays, but everyone feels them. When they charge, the deck plates pick up a tight buzz, the air goes dry, and the whole station seems to clench for a heartbeat. That super laser isn't a dish, it's an organ. The visible eye is the focusing face. The spine behind it runs through Kyber amplification chambers, cathedral-scale rooms of conduits, cooling and power regulators, channeling an ocean of energy down a lane so precise it makes gunners superstitious. Fire control sits behind more checkpoints than the Emperor's bedroom. Most of us never got within 10 bulkheads. We learned the warning tones by rhythm and stayed out of the lift banks when the tones started singing. Life on board is repetition that pretends to be calm. Drills, inspections, patrols. The corridors are so straight you can feel yourself getting longer. After a week you stop asking what time it is. After a month you stop caring. And then one day somebody decides to prove the point. You're halfway through grey ration paste when the loudspeakers go flat and official. All hands prepare for weapons demonstration. The room shrinks by half. You can feel the rumour rip across the mess like static. Alderaan, a core world, you're not cleared for the firing gallery. The tremor walks up through your boots, rattles the cutlery, ticks the lights for a blink. There's a bright bleed of green around bulkhead seams, not even a flash, more like a colour your eyes weren't built to see. Then the PA cuts back in. Primary weapon test successful, target neutralised. That's all. The most boring sentence ever written about the most terrible thing ever done. A minute later, a screen in the mess flickers to a feed from an observation platform. Where the blue-green marble used to be, there's a haloed cloud and nothing else. A trooper sets his tray down like it's a live grenade and walks out. For the next few days, the station is careful. Same hum, same polish, same routine, but softer. Officers talk like their throats are tight. Troopers march like they're trying not to hear their own footfalls. The propaganda loop gets louder. Stability, order, peace. And you can't tell if they're aiming it at the galaxy or at themselves. Here's the part nobody prints. The detention blocks are standardized to the point of hypnosis. Same smell, same hiss of doors, same pacing of lights. You guard one, you've basically guarded them all. The medical wings are quiet and efficient. No family waiting rooms, no flowers. Just a nurse droid that knows your TK before you speak. Wayfinding is obedience training. If your badge doesn't match a corridor's memory, the corridor forgets you exist. The station teaches you to move only where you're told, and after a while you stop trying handles just to see. Some nights off duty, you can get to an observation port, not the fancy ones, the little crew windows near maintenance spines. You look out at the starfield and you think about scale, about how small everything is when a single order can erase a world. You tell yourself the Death Star ended war. Then you catch your reflection in the glass, a white bucket against infinity, and you realise war didn't end. It moved inside the building. There's a superstition in the lower decks that the station is haunted, not by ghosts in sheets, but by cost. Millions worked on it. Many never left, and some part of them feels wired into the hull. Every groan in the framing, every flick in the lights, someone whispers, "That's them." You laugh it off and still walk a little faster past the bulkhead where the sound came from. If you're thinking city, you're underselling it. It's a small moon that learned punctuation. And with all that, you wake up, suit up, pass the same viewports, salute the same officers, and do the math quietly in your head. If this thing really can't be hurt, why does it sound like it's holding its breath? The day the fire finally comes is not today, not in this part of the story. Today is the part where you stand in a corridor that looks like every other corridor and realise pride and dread can live in the same chest without speaking to each other. Today is where you learn the difference between serving a weapon and living inside one. So you keep marching, you keep your armour flawless, your number crisp, your voice level. From the outside it reads as confidence, from the inside it feels like waiting. The quiet kind, where the station is so certain of itself that no one notices how loudly certainty creaks. You never forget your first look at a Star Destroyer. Even from orbit, it feels like a mountain moving on purpose. You think this thing could crush cities without even landing, and then they tell you you'll be living inside it. And you realize mountains aren't meant to have plumbing. The shuttle ride up is so quiet, nobody talks. The docking base swallows you whole, the blast doors seal, and suddenly you're in a place where time doesn't mean much. The air's cold and dry, recycled so many times it tastes like nothing. There's no horizon or weather, but steel and fluorescent light that never dims. The first week aboard is disorienting. Every corridor looks identical, the same grey walls and glowing strips of light, like the designers wanted to make sure you'd never find your way without orders. Maybe they did. The Empire loves mazes. You share a barracks with a few hundred troopers, lined wall to wall with stacked bunks. Each bed has a number, not a name. There's no window, clock, only a ventilation drone that screams loud enough to drown out snoring. You learn to sleep with your armor stacked at your feet, because if the alarm goes off, you've got 60 seconds to gear up, or you're scrubbing air ducts for a week. Breakfast is served in the mess. Same grey trays, same grey food, protein cubes, hydration packs, sometimes something that looks like eggs if the supply ships got through. A sergeant stands by the door, making sure everyone eats in silence. The officers claim it's about efficiency. It's really about reminding you this isn't a cafe. It's a factory that manufactures order. The daily schedule never changes. Morning inspections, midday drills, afternoon maintenance, evening security patrols. Each shift ends with another readiness briefing, which is code for standing in formation while an officer quotes Tarkin's handbook on discipline. You start to realize that on an Imperial ship, the point isn't productivity, it's predictability. If everyone's always busy, nobody asks questions. Then there's the sound. Star Destroyers never go silent. The engines throb in the background, a constant low vibration you feel through your ribs. Doors hiss, consoles beep, boots echo down endless hallways. After a few weeks, you stop hearing it consciously until you leave the ship. Then the silence of a planet feels wrong, like someone turned the galaxy off. Star Destroyers are divided into layers of privilege. The bridge officers live like minor royalty, private cabins, carpeted halls, even chairs. The lower decks are for everyone else, Stormtroopers, technicians, medics. The officers call it environmental variance. You call it class divide with better branding. You'll spend a lot of your life waiting in those corridors, waiting for orders, waiting for transports, waiting for a chance to breathe something that isn't filtered through metal. When the ship's on deployment, you might go weeks without seeing a planet. The only view you get is from the hangar doors during maintenance drills, a strip of stars that disappears the moment the shield comes online. Maintenance duty is the Empire's favourite punishment. You'll polish landing struts, scrub carbon scoring off tie panels, and pretend the vacuum suits fit. Half the time, the safety clamps fail, so you're tethered to the hull, praying the magnetic boots don't glitch. If they do, congratulations, you're now part of space debris. The TIE pilots get their own section, naturally. Sleek black flight suits, smug expressions, and a tendency to brag about speed records nobody verifies. Troopers don't fly much, you ride landing craft. Metal boxes with seats bolted to the walls and straps that cut into your shoulders. No windows, of course. You just feel the engines rumble, hear the pilot over the intercom yelling, "Brace for descent," and hope the heat shields hold. The moment the doors open, you're running into blinding sunlight or blaster fire, whichever the mission gods picked that day. Troop transports are worse. They pack hundreds of troopers in rows so tight you can't stretch your legs. The air recyclers wheeze. Someone always gets sick and the guy next to you inevitably takes off his helmet for just a second. The smell after 12 hours is the real face of Imperial discipline. When you're not deployed, you get assigned hangar duty. That means guiding shuttles, fueling ties, and pretending you understand flight codes. And then there are the drills. Every ship runs them. Boarding simulations, decompression alarms, reactor leak scenarios. 90% of the time, it's a test. The other 10, you wish it were. The Empire doesn't tell you which is which, because panic keeps you sharp. When the red lights start flashing, you run. That's the only universal rule. The command sections are designed to be intimidating. Doors taller than necessary, floors polished like mirrors, walls lined with viewports that only the officers get to look through. The bridge itself feels like a temple. Everyone speaks in low voices, as if afraid to disturb the machinery. The captain stands on the upper platform, staring into the void, hands clasped behind his back like he owns the stars. Down in engineering, it's another world entirely. Hot, loud, chaotic. Techs crawl through conduits, droids whir past carrying fusion coils, and the smell of coolant could knock out a Wookiee. If the bridge is the brain, engineering's the guts, constantly groaning, constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Stormtroopers aren't allowed near the reactor core, but you can feel it when you walk past, a low electric buzz that makes your skin prickle. The older troopers joke about it. If the destroyer likes you, it won't vent to your section today. You laugh because what else can you do? Sleep cycles don't mean much in space. You learn to nap anywhere. In bunks, in shuttles, even standing in formation, if the officer drones long enough. Dreams are rare. When they come, they're usually of open skies or quiet forests. Places that don't smell like disinfectant. Some ships have recreation rooms, though calling them that is generous. A few tables, a hollow board, maybe a newsfeed replaying propaganda from the core. Drinking's banned, gambling's banned, humour's not encouraged, but everyone does it anyway. A few credits on a sub-backhand makes life feel less mechanical. Mail delivery happens once every few months, depending on hyperspace routes. You get data letters from home, if home still exists. And for a minute, you remember what normal felt like. Then an officer walks by and reminds you the Empire doesn't pay you to reminisce. Every deck has a patrol schedule. You walk the same routes 100 times, scanning for suspicious activity, which usually means bored technicians trying to sneak extra sleep. You start naming the droids just to stay sane. The ship's architecture enforces rank more efficiently than any whip. Officers walk on raised platforms, literally above you. Their corridors are wider, better lit. Your boots never leave the lower decks unless you're summoned. And when you are, you polish every inch of armour until you can see your reflection. There's a saying among the crew, the bigger the ship, the smaller you feel. And Star Destroyers are enormous. They carry entire regiments, squadrons, walkers, droids, even prefabricated outposts. You could fit a small city inside one and still have room for a fleet of TIEs. Yet somehow, all that space feels claustrophobic. Maybe because you know you'll never walk it all. Maybe because it isn't yours. The only time you see stars properly is during docking. The hangar shield drops for a moment, and you get that flash of infinity. Then the shield flickers back on, and the universe disappears behind a shimmer of energy. That's the Empire in a nutshell. Infinite possibilities, zero freedom. Once in a while, the ship's loudspeakers blare an announcement about commendations for exceptional service. You never know who they're talking about. The names are always numbers. TK something, DT something. Could be you, could be the guy who polished the captain's boots. Doesn't matter. Everyone applauds because it's easier than not. You think all stormtroopers look the same until you actually start moving around the Empire. Then you realise there's one for every imaginable climate, job, and excuse to wear slightly different armour. Somewhere in a boardroom, some Imperial bureaucrat must have said, "What if we made a snow version?" And everyone nodded like it was genius. The regular white armour guys, that's you, are the baseline. Every variant starts from your template. Same plastoid shell, same foggy helmet, just repainted or modified for wherever command decides to drop you. You're the classic model. The kind of trooper tourists buy on action figure racks. Nothing fancy, but without you, there's no Empire image. The first time you see sand troopers, it's probably on Tatooine or some outer rim dust ball. They look like you, just dirtier, literally. Their armour's stained beige from constant sandstorms. They march through heat waves while their armour turns into an oven, radio crackling with static, trying not to choke on the dust that sneaks into every seal. People think stormtroopers don't sweat. Sand troopers prove otherwise. Then there are the snow troopers. Imagine wearing thermal curtains over your armour and calling it insulation. They're stationed on Hoth-type worlds, trudging through blizzards where even droids freeze up. Their faceplate has that long cloth drape that makes them look like fancy napkins, until you see them frostbitten from the inside. The pay bonus never really covers the toes they lose. Scout troopers have it better. Lightweight armour, open-face visors, actual visibility. You see them zipping around on speeder bikes like they're in a holo ad for adventure gear. Everyone secretly envies them, mostly because they get fresh air. Scouts handle recon, sabotage, and chasing rebels who think trees make good cover. They crash a lot. Turns out threading a 500 kph bike through forests is harder than propaganda makes it look. Next up, shore troopers, stationed on tropical worlds, guarding Imperial data vaults or cargo facilities. Perfect tan, blue stripes, armor that actually lets them breathe. You see them and think, okay, somebody at high command owed these guys a favor. They patrol beaches while the rest of the army rots on cold ships. Every Stormtrooper jokes that if you can bribe a quartermaster, you'll end up a shore trooper. They don't confirm or deny it. Then come the weird specialists. Swamp troopers with green-tinted armor and sealed suits to wade through jungle muck. They spend months smelling like mold and blaster oil. Magma troopers serve near lava flows and mining colonies. Rumor is their armor's coated in heat-resistant plating, but it still melts if you get too close. Thermal protection just means you last 5 seconds longer than the guy next to you. Death troopers. Those are the scary ones. Black armor, scrambled voices, tall, silent. Nobody knows who they really are, only that they answer directly to intelligence or Vader's personal command. When they walk into a room, everyone else walks out. Some say they're cybernetically enhanced. Others swear they're just humans who passed training so brutal it erased their humanity. They never joke, never eat in the mess, never miss a shot. Standing next to them makes you feel like a toy soldier. Purge troopers came later during the Jedi hunts. Black and red armor, electro staffs, the works. They were trained to fight Force users, which sounds brave until you realize their job description is basically try not to get sliced in half by a lightsaber. Most didn't last long, but the few who did became legends among Imperial ranks, not for skill, but for sheer survival. And then there's the mystery batch, Dark Troopers. Depending on who you ask, they're either droids, cyborgs, or nightmares. You rarely see them in person. When you do, they move like machines and sound like thunder. Rumor says Moff Gideon revived the project decades after it was shelved. Pure metal soldiers built to make human ones obsolete. That's the Empire, always dreaming of an army that doesn't need feeding or feelings. Each variant has its own mythology. Snow troopers brag about endurance, sand troopers about toughness, scouts about reflexes. You start to notice little rivalries, who's real military, who's garrison fluff. It's funny because you all get paid the same miserable credits and bleed the same colour under the armour, but competition keeps people sane. Arguing over whose assignment sucks more is the only form of therapy that's free. You also start to see how the Empire uses specialisation to divide. If every trooper's busy identifying as a certain type, nobody asks bigger questions. You're too focused on your own small world, your climate, your gear, your next deployment, to realise the system's the same everywhere. Grey walls, bad food, orders from above. The paint colour might change, but the obedience stays. Even armour customisation has a hierarchy. Regulars can't modify anything. Elites get upgrades. Death troopers have encrypted comms, thermal visors, enhanced HUDs. The rest of you get optional knee padding if the supply line's generous. You laugh about it, but deep down you know it's how the Empire reminds everyone of their place. Not all variants are field units. Shock troopers handle security in big cities. Crimson markings, polished armour, stun battens for crowd control. They're part soldier, part scarecrow. Civilians freeze the moment they see that red stripe. Then you have naval troopers, black uniformed, helmeted guards, who stand at attention near airlocks and never speak. They're not technically stormtroopers, but they share the same aura of please don't make eye contact. The wildest ones, though, are zero-G troopers. Jetpacks, magnetic boots, suits sealed for vacuum. They train for ship-to-ship combat, boarding enemy vessels through the void. Sounds heroic until you realise a single wrong thruster burst turns you into a free-floating popsicle. Their motto? If you can still hear comms, you're not lost yet. Serving alongside all these variations, you start to appreciate the quiet genius behind the madness. The Empire built a soldier for every climate, every front, every nightmare scenario. Every specialised unit is a billboard of control. It says, there's no place we can't reach, no condition we can't survive. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter. The galaxy believes it. Most troopers never leave their climate zone. You might spend your whole career breathing recycled air on a frigate, while someone else rots in a swamp. If you ever get reassigned, the paperwork's endless. The Empire doesn't cross-train easily. They'd rather breed obedience than adaptability. But once in a while, someone transfers. A sand unit veteran ends up on an ice world and realizes armor color's the only thing separating one kind of suffering from another. The first week they keep calling snow light-colored sand. By the third, they stop making jokes. Then there are the Legends units, ones historians argue about, black hole troopers, nova troopers, even rumored radiation zone detachments. Some of that's propaganda, some's real. The Empire liked mystery. It made fear efficient. If people think there's a special kind of trooper watching them, they'll behave even when there isn't. But under all the variations, there's a weird kind of respect. You see a sand trooper or death trooper and think, yeah, that guy's probably miserable too. Doesn't matter if they're elite or expendable. You share the same armor smell, the same recycled air, the same half-cold ration paste. When the day ends, and you hang your helmet on the rack next to a dozen nearly identical ones, you notice tiny differences. A scratch here, a chipped lens there. They're proof that even in a machine built for sameness, life finds ways to leave marks. You know, for the first few months on post, you're still riding that high from training. You feel like you're part of something big, something important. You're keeping the peace, right? You're the man. Then one day, you're on patrol in some dusty backwater city and you see a kid. This little kid, maybe 6, 7, is playing with a toy spaceship in the street. He's making all the whooshing noises, having a grand old time. He looks up, he sees you, and he freezes. The toy ship drops right out of his hand and clatters on the ground, and he doesn't even go to pick it up. He just stares. His eyes are huge, and then he turns and runs, screaming for his mum. That's the moment it hits you. It's a quiet little moment, nothing like the blaster range or the drill yard, but it hits you harder than any stun baton. You're not a person to them. You're not even a soldier. That's the face of fear. And it's your face now. It's in everything. You walk into a cantina and the whole place goes dead quiet. Not a respectful quiet, like when an officer walks in. You can feel the resentment coming off people in waves. The bartender wipes a glass a little too hard. The traders at the corner table stop their haggling and just stare at their drinks. Nobody meets your visor. They look at your chest plate, your boots, anywhere but the spot where your eyes should be. And the old guys, the ones who look like they might have fought in the Clone Wars, they're the worst. They don't look away. They give you this long, flat stare, like they're looking right through the plastoid and seeing every mistake you've ever made. There's no fear in their eyes, just this deep, tired resentment. You get the feeling they're not seeing you. They're seeing the guy who came before you, and the guy before him. You're just the latest model of a problem they've had for a long, long time. The Empire sold us on this idea that we were bringing stability. We were the shield that protected the galaxy from chaos. But out here, you realize we're not the shield. We're the blaster, pointed at everyone's head to make them sit still and be quiet. Peace through power sounds great in a propaganda hollow. On the ground, it means a shopkeeper's hands shake when he has to give you his inventory reports. It means a mother pulls her child closer when you walk past. Let me describe a patrol for you. Just a standard, boring patrol. You and your squad, TK422, Razor, Jinx, you're walking through the main thoroughfare of this mid-level city. Before you even turn the corner, the noise hits you. It's a wall of sound, vendors shouting, speeder bikes buzzing, music spilling out of doorways, a dozen different languages, all mixing together. It's life. It's messy and loud and vibrant. Then you round the corner, and it's like you hit a mute button. The shouting stops. The music from the cantina cuts out, probably because the bartender saw you on the external cam and killed it. The conversations don't just end, they're severed. You can see people mid-sentence, their mouths hanging open, before they snap them shut. The only sound left is the hum of your armor's cooling unit and the clomp of your own boots on the pavement. You walk forward and the crowd parts. It's not a panicked scramble. It's a slow, deliberate, fluid movement. A sea of bodies just opening up a path for you. They don't look at you. They look at the ground, at the sky, at the person next to them. Anything but you. You're a toxin and the body of the city is instinctively rejecting you. You smell things in that silence, the scent of spiced meat from a food stall you can no longer see because the shutters are suddenly down, the oily smell of engine grease, the faint sweet smell of some local flower that a woman is selling. She's frozen, holding a bouquet, her eyes wide. You can see her calculating, wondering if she should offer you one, if that's what you want, if it will make you go away faster. You want to tell her you don't care about her flowers, but you can't. You're not allowed to. You're on patrol. So you just keep walking, your E11 held across your chest, a perfect, silent, terrifying statue. This one time, you were checking cargo manifests at the spaceport. Standard procedure. This old Ithorian was trying to get his ship cleared. His hands were trembling so hard he could barely operate his datapad. You weren't even doing anything, just standing there, waiting. Your squadmate gets impatient. The Ithorian flinched so hard he nearly dropped the pad. He finally got the data up, and his manifest was a mess, all out of order. He was panicking, sure we were going to impound his ship, his livelihood. All you could think was, "Buddy, I don't care about your fruit shipment. I just want this shift to be over, so I can go back to the barracks and take this helmet off." But you couldn't say that, so you just stand there, being part of the machine that was slowly crushing this poor guy. And the crazy thing is, you start to lean into it. You have to. Because if you're not the scary, faceless enforcer, then what are you? You're just some guy from a planet you're not allowed to talk about, wearing a ridiculously uncomfortable white costume. So you lean into the myth. You make your voice a little flatter, a little more mechanical over the external speaker. You stand a little straighter, a little more imposing. You become the monster, because the monster is easier to be than the man. The monster doesn't get lonely. The monster doesn't wonder if he's on the right side. You start developing little tells, little performances. You learn that if you tilt your helmet just so when looking at someone, it seems more menacing. If you stand perfectly still for a long time, it makes people even more nervous than if you're pacing. You're an actor on a stage, and the entire galaxy is your audience, too terrified to applaud. The loneliness it's a physical thing. It's a cold spot in your chest that the environmental suit can't heat up. You're surrounded by millions of people, your squad, your legion, the crew of a Star Destroyer, and you've never felt more alone in your life. Because you're not a person, you're a unit, you're TK whatever. Your thoughts, your feelings, your past, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is the armor and the blaster. The worst is when you see something genuinely human and you're reminded of what you're missing. You saw a couple arguing once, right out in the open. A young man and woman having a full-blown, passionate fight about something. She was waving her arms. He was throwing his hands up in the air. They were so wrapped up in each other, in their own little world, that they didn't even notice your squad for a good 10 seconds. Then they did. And the fight just evaporated. The anger, the passion, the life. It all drained from their faces and was replaced with that blank, careful mask of fear. It does something to your head, man. It really does. You start to feel like you're the one who's out of place, like you're the intruder. You're the ghost haunting their world, not the other way around. There's this weird guilt that starts to creep in, and you have to fight it down, because guilt is a luxury a Stormtrooper can't afford. Guilt makes you hesitate, and hesitation gets you, or your squad mates, killed. So you bury it. You focus on the job, check the IDS, inspect the cargo, patrol the perimeter. You become a machine. You do it so well that sometimes, when you're back in the barracks and you take the helmet off, you look in the reflective metal of your locker and you don't even recognize the guy staring back. The face is pale from always being covered. The eyes are tired, and you have to remind yourself, that's you. That's the man inside the machine. But out there, on the street, you're the walking, talking embodiment of the Empire, and the galaxy is absolutely terrified of you. The crazy part is, after a while, you learn that you should be terrified of what that does to you. The real fear isn't the rebels or the blaster fire. The real fear is that one day, you'll look in that locker and the man won't be there at all. Just the monster, staring back, comfortable in its shell. The Empire doesn't tell you about this part, the camaraderie. It's the only thing that keeps you from losing your mind. You eat with the same 10-20 guys. You sleep in the same bunk room. You complain about the same tasteless nutrient paste. You polish each other's armor before an inspection. You build a family, a weird, dysfunctional military family, but a family all the same. Let me paint you a picture of the barracks. It's never what you'd call comfortable. Think of the most impersonal, sterile hotel room you can imagine. Then strip out any sense of colour or personal touch. The walls are a dull, gunmetal grey. The bunks are stacked too high, with a thin mattress that feels like you're sleeping on a sheet of Durasteel. Everything has that faint recycled smell of ozone, lubricant and human sweat. It's a smell that gets into your clothes, your hair, and never really leaves you. But within that sterile chaos, you carve out your own spaces. That's the first rule of sanity, personalising the impersonal. You'd get a new guy, fresh from the Academy on Lothal or Carida, and his bunk would be pristine, regulation perfect. Then after a week, you'd see a little something. A tiny, almost invisible scratch on the bedpost he'd used to mark the days. A small smooth stone from a planet he'd been stationed on, tucked under his pillow. It was a quiet act of rebellion, a way of saying, I was here. I am a person. You knew a guy, TK822, who had a single, faded playing card, the Sabak Knight of Staves, taped to the inside of his locker door. It was from his first pay game, he said, his lucky charm. He died on a dust ball called Tarnab. When you cleared out his locker, the sergeant just ripped the card down and tossed it in the incinerator with the rest of the trash. That hit you harder than seeing him fall, in a way. The Empire just consumes everything, even your little pieces of luck. There's a hierarchy, but it's not the one you see on the holocharts. Officially, you've got your squad leaders, your sergeants, your lieutenants. But unofficially, you've got the old hands, the guys who've been on a dozen campaigns. They're the ones who really teach you how to survive. They show you how to loosen a strap on your chest plate so it doesn't chafe your neck raw on a long march. They teach you which officers are by-the-book sticklers and which ones will look the other way if you need a moment. You remember your first week with the unit. You were so green you still polished the soles of your boots. This old veteran, a guy everyone called Rusty because his voice had this grating, weathered sound to it, he just sidled up to you. He didn't say a word at first, just watched you struggling with a power cell pack. Then he grunted, took it from you, flipped it over, and gave it a solid whack with the heel of his hand. It clicked into place perfectly. Everything in the Empire, he rasped, responds to percussive maintenance. Then he walked away. That was the entirety of your welcome. It was more valuable than the entire Imperial Infantry manual. These guys were the real leadership. They were the ones who pulled you aside after your first firefight, when your hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the smell of blaster scorch was stuck in your nose, and just sat with you, no words needed. They'd just hand you a cup of that awful tar-like caf the mess served, and sit in silence until your breathing evened out. They got it. They knew the official debriefing was just a box-ticking exercise for the officers. The real debrief happened right there, in the quiet of the barracks, with the guys who'd been standing next to you. And then there are the jokes. Oh man, the jokes. They're dark, they're miserable, and they're the funniest things you'll ever hear. You have to laugh. You'd cry otherwise. You had this one running gag about the food. You called the nutrient paste synth sludge, and you'd have elaborate betting pools on what the flavour of the cycle was supposed to be. I'm getting a hint of stale boots with an aftertaste of regret. Stupid stuff. The best, or maybe the worst jokes, were about your own effectiveness. You saw the rebel propaganda. They called you bucketheads. They said you couldn't hit the broadside of a Star Destroyer, so you leaned into it. You'd be cleaning your blaster, and a buddy would walk by and say, "Hey, careful with that." You might actually hit something and ruin our reputation, or you'd be on the firing range, and a guy would completely miss the target, and someone would yell, "See? That's commitment to the bit." It was your way of taking the sting out of it. If you made the joke first, it couldn't hurt you. It was a quiet rebellion. For a few minutes, you weren't an Imperial asset. You were just a guy making your friends laugh. You start to lose track of time. A day is just a cycle. Wake up, drill, eat, patrol, sleep, repeat. The galaxy outside, the one with colourful planets and civilians living their lives, starts to feel like a myth. Something from a story you heard as a kid. This, the metal corridors and the white armour, becomes the only reality. You become institutionalised. The thought of open spaces, of a quiet planet with no schedule, could give you a panic attack. You're like those fish that live at the bottom of the ocean, adapted to the crushing pressure. Bring you up to the surface, to freedom, and you just fall apart. Nobody retires from the Corps. You don't put in your 20 years, get a medal, and buy a little cottage on Naboo. That's a fairy tale they tell the new recruits. The only way out is in a body bag, or broken to the point where you're no longer useful, shipped off to some forgotten med center or mining colony to fade away. You saw it happen. A guy named Joran took a bad blaster shot to the knee. The bone was mostly synth now, and it gave him a permanent limp. He couldn't keep up on marches. Within a month, he was transferred. Reassigned to a logistical role, they said. You never heard from him again. You sign your life away, and they don't give it back. The armor becomes your skin, the Legion becomes your entire world, and the only retirement plan is a blaster bolt. You all know it, you just never, ever talk about it. What's the point? Saying it out loud makes it too real, too heavy for the barracks walls to contain. So you cling to the guys next to you. TK422, TK110, the gearhead who can not only take apart a E11 blaster blindfolded, but can also modify the power converter to give it a little more kick. A violation of about 15 regulations, but a lifesaver in a tight spot. They're your real family. They're the only thing that makes the grey walls and the constant hum bearable. Because in the end, the Empire doesn't care about you. You're a number, a line on a budget report, but the guy in the bunk next to you, he knows your name, your real one, the one you had before you got your TK designation. He knows what you look like when you're scared. He's the one who shares his water when your canteen is empty. And in a universe of endless grey and overwhelming power, that tiny personal connection, that loyalty to the man beside you and not the symbol on your shoulder, that makes all the difference in the galaxy. It's the only thing that does. Alright, pull up a chair. You want to know what real fear is? You'll find out. Let's set the scene. You're on the Vector, an Imperial I-class Star Destroyer, patrolling the ass end of the Outer Rim. Your mission is to pacify a sector called the Grumani Belt. Sounds grand, right? Pacify. In reality, it means you're orbiting a planet, a ball of mud and misery, where it rains a corrosive slime that eats at the seals on your armor. The insurgency there isn't an organized rebellion. It's a bunch of angry farmers with stolen blasters and a serious grudge. They know the terrain, they use guerrilla tactics, and they're bleeding you dry. A patrol goes out, one guy steps on a crude pressure plate mine. Another gets picked off by a sniper from a ridge a click away. You call in an orbital strike, turn the ridge into glass, and feel good for about 5 minutes. Then the next day, it happens again. It's demoralizing. You start to see it in the little things. The way a trooper fumbles with his gear, his hands shaking from too much stimcaf and not enough sleep. The way the mess hall goes quieter than a tomb, nobody making eye contact. You're losing the war of attrition against your own morale. The command structure's not much better. Your captain, a man named Lorne, is a political appointee, got his rank because his uncle's a Moff. He's all polished boots and sharp salutes, but he's got the tactical sense of a concussed Gundark. His solution to everything? More brute force, more patrols, more orbital scans, more loudspeaker announcements, telling the populace to comply. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. The officers under him are a mixed bag. Some are career military, frustrated and ground down, knowing you're stuck in a losing proposition. Others are just waiting for their tour to end so they can get a cushy job on Coruscant. This is the atmosphere, this thick soup of frustration and dread when the first whisper reaches you. It's a rumour that starts on the bridge and trickles down through the ranks like a virus. It moves from officer to enlisted, from engineer to gunner, until it's just hanging in the recycled air. He is coming. Lord Vader. The change is immediate and terrifying. Captain Lorne, who usually struts around the bridge like he owns it, suddenly looks like a man who's seen a ghost. His face goes pale, and you can see the sweat beading on his forehead even from across the command walkway. He starts barking orders, but his voice has lost its bluster. It's tight, strained. He's terrified of making a mistake. The usual sounds of the ship begin to die. The clanging of boots on deck plates, the shouted orders, the background chatter of the comms. It all fades into this heavy, oppressive silence. It's a silence you can feel, a pressure in your ears. Troopers who usually joke around in the corridors now walk with their heads down, not saying a word. It's the quietest the ship has ever been, quieter than the vacuum outside the hull. The preparation is a frenzy of pure, undiluted fear. Everything has to be perfect. Floors are buffed to a mirror shine that you can see your distorted reflection in. Every piece of equipment, every console, every blaster rifle is inspected, re-inspected, and then inspected a third time. Officers walk the lines of Stormtroopers, adjusting a shoulder plate here, straightening a strap there. their hands trembling slightly. You see a lieutenant repolish the same section of railing for 10 minutes straight. It's like you're preparing for a divine visitation, and the god is a vengeful one. When the shuttle is detected entering the system, a general call goes out. All personnel to designated stations, honor guard to main hangar bay. Your squad is part of the guard. You form up in 2 perfect lines, creating a corridor from the shuttle landing pad to the main exit. You're drilled to absolute stillness. Don't fidget, don't cough, don't even breathe too loudly. You're positioned about halfway down the line, just another anonymous white helmet in a sea of white helmets. The only sound is the low thrum of the bay's energy field and the frantic beating of your own heart. His shuttle is like nothing you've ever seen. It's not a standard Lambda class. This is a custom job, a sleek, black arrowhead that looks less like a transport and more like a predator. It moves with a silent, menacing grace that's utterly unnerving. It doesn't so much land as settle onto the deck plates without a sound. The ramp descends with a soft hydraulic hiss, and then it hits you. You can watch all the HoloNet news reports you want. You can hear recordings. They don't prepare you. The sound is wet, mechanical, but organic. It's the sound of a man drowning in his own suit, over and over again. It's a rhythm of pain and artificial life. It's the most terrifying sound in the galaxy because it means he's here, and he's close. Then he appears at the top of the ramp. He starts walking, deliberate, powerful, each step echoing with finality in the dead silence. He moves down the line between you, and as he passes and you feel it, a coldness that has nothing to do with the ship's environmental controls. It's a deep, psychic chill, the feeling of standing too close to a black hole that sucks all the light and warmth out of the world. You don't dare move a muscle, you just stare straight ahead, through your helmet's eyepiece, praying you're invisible. He passes Captain Lorne, who's standing at rigid attention, his salute so sharp it looks like it might cut him. Vader doesn't return it. He doesn't even acknowledge him. He just stops, his back to the captain, and speaks. "Captain, your reports have been inadequate. You have failed to provide it. You have wasted the Emperor's resources. You will accompany me now." He doesn't wait for a reply. He just continues his walk out of the hangar bay. The moment he's gone, the hangar bay doesn't erupt into noise. The silence holds for a few more seconds, a collective exhalation of breath you didn't know you were holding. Then, slowly, the normal sounds of the ship return, but they're muted, hushed, as if everyone's afraid of drawing his attention back. Your new orders come down less than an hour later. The mission's simple, a direct result of Vader's interrogation of the local command. You've finally located the main insurgent headquarters, hidden in a deep canyon network. It's a fortified compound, supposedly housing the warlord, a man named Gorlan, and his stolen Imperial tech. A trio of prototype deflector shield generators. Your job is a full assault. Your squad, Gamma 9, is assigned to breach the outer perimeter and create a diversion while the main force, led by Vader himself, hits the front gate. You deploy under the cover of a corrosive drizzle. You move through the twisting canyon, the jagged rock walls feeling like they're closing in on you. You can hear the distant crump of artillery and the sharper reports of blaster fire from the main assault. Your part goes off without a hitch. You hit the western wall, plant your charges, and blow a hole clean through. The handful of guards there are taken by surprise and quickly subdued. You secure the area and wait for the main force to link up. That's when the sounds from the main compound change. The initial intense firefight, the zing of blaster bolts, the explosions, suddenly stops. Your lieutenant's voice comes over the comm, stripped of all its usual authority. All units converge on the main hall. Immediate. You move out, stacking up at the compound's central building. You move inside, weapons raised, and the scene that greets you, you'll never forget it. The main hall is a large open space, maybe meant for feasts or gatherings. Now it's an abattoir. There are bodies everywhere. 20, 30 rebel fighters, but they weren't killed in a firefight. Blasters lie on the floor, many of them neatly sliced in half. Control consoles are smashed, wires spilling out like guts. Bodies are contorted in impossible positions, thrown against walls, with enough force to crack the stone. Some look crushed. It's messy, personal, and brutally efficient. There's no cover, no defensive positions. It's as if they were swarmed by a force they couldn't comprehend, let alone fight. And in the center of this carnage Standing perfectly still is Darth Vader. On his knees before Vader is Gorlan. The warlord's a big man, known for his cruelty, but now he's reduced to a sobbing, pleading wreck. Vader slowly, deliberately, closes his hand into a fist. You don't see him touch the man. He's a good 3 meters away, but you hear it, a sickening, sequential crunching sound, like someone methodically stomping on a crate of dry kindling. You stand there, frozen, for what feels like an eternity. You know that feeling when a game breaks up and everyone argues about who gets to keep the ball? That's the galaxy now. Only the ball is a Star Destroyer with a dent, half a TIE wing, and a payroll file that says pending. You heard the rumours before the transmission even came in. Something about a forest moon, a shield generator blown to pieces, some rebels dancing with teddy bears. Didn't make sense, but then the real news came through. The Death Star was gone, again. This time with the Emperor still on it. You didn't believe it at first. Nobody did. There were too many false alarms in the past. Rebel victory, command post taken, fleet crippled, all those bold reports that turned out to be nothing. But this one felt different. Real quiet started to spread through the ranks. The kind where you stop what you're doing and look around and realise no one knows who's in charge anymore. You and your squad were on some backwater outpost. Dusty rocks, 2 moons, lizards that hissed when you got close. No officers around. Your comms officer was asleep in the corner with a bottle of something strong. And your commander, well, technically, he wasn't even your commander. He was just the oldest guy left with a clean uniform and a half-decent sense of direction. He just said, "Looks like we hold the line until someone says otherwise." Problem was, no one ever did. Weeks passed. The supplies kept coming, but slower. Then they stopped. Command channels were silent. Propaganda broadcasts cut off mid-sentence. Even the coded ones, the ones only the higher-ups could understand. The rebellion didn't roll in like a thunderstorm. It just sort of arrived. They said the war was over. The Empire had fallen. Peace, freedom, all that good stuff. You kept your blaster charged anyway. The Battle of Jakku was supposed to be the final stand. You didn't fight there, most didn't. The ones that did, well, let's just say that's where the hope died. You saw the footage years later, Star Destroyers falling out of the sky like dead whales. No coordination, no backup plans, just chaos. And once the last of the fleet went down, that was it. The Empire wasn't even a shadow anymore. It was a bad memory with good armour. Your own squad split not long after. One by one they slipped away. Some joined merc groups, some tossed the armour and tried to blend in. One guy, Keebs, said he was going to open a bar. No one believed him. He was too twitchy. Last time you saw him, he was trying to sell Stormtrooper helmets as authentic collectibles outside a spaceport. Claimed his was signed by Vader, with a laser burn. You didn't have the heart to call him out. There were deserters, of course, people who vanished the second the command lines collapsed. You couldn't blame them. Staying meant risking a blaster bolt in the back or waiting for some overzealous rebel cell to march in and decide your armour made you guilty. And in fairness, they weren't always wrong, because yeah, some things stick with you, stuff you don't talk about, orders you followed because you had to, targets you shot at because someone said the word insurgent or non-compliant, villages that got pacified. You weren't a hero, you weren't a villain either. You were just there, day after day, month after month, standing in the sun with sand in your boots, making choices that didn't feel like choices at all. That was the worst part. It wasn't the fall, it was the silence after. The realization that no one was coming to explain what it all meant. That all the drills, all the code numbers, all the salutes and yes sirs and perfect formations, none of it brought you a place in history. The galaxy moved on without you. The rebellion turned into a republic. The republic started arguing with itself again, and new wars popped up with different names. Your name didn't make it into any of the books. You weren't part of the story anymore. Sometimes you'd hear folks say, the Empire was evil. Like it was that simple. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But when you're standing over a fresh grave, armour scuffed, hands shaking, wondering why the stars don't feel the same anymore, you're not really thinking about politics. You're thinking about your squad, about the guy who always complained about ration bars, the one who swore he was going to retire and become a pod racing commentator. And then you're thinking about all the things you didn't say when you had the chance. There's no ending for Stormtroopers, no retirement parade, no thank you for your service, just a lot of quiet exits and dusty footprints. The armour's tough, but it doesn't protect you from being forgotten. There's a certain freedom in that, weirdly enough, being invisible. But sometimes, when you're lying awake and the world's quiet, you wonder if maybe it would have been better to go down with the ship. With your brothers, with your purpose. Because surviving's messy. It means carrying the weight, all of it. And the galaxy, it doesn't stop for you to catch your breath. It just keeps spinning. New empires, new rebellions, new faces in shiny new armor. Different paint, same mission. You've seen them. Wide-eyed kids in pristine gear, acting like they're the first ones to march down a corridor. You want to warn them, tell them not to lose themselves in it. But what would be the point? You were that kid once too. Maybe that's the cycle. Maybe we all get replaced eventually. The new bosses arrive, with crisp capes and tired eyes. Some call themselves Moff, some acting Moff. A few go with Provisional High Marshal, which is just a Moff wearing perfume. They all have one thing in common, a plan that fits on a poster. Stability, retaliation, order, big words, tiny budgets. Their first move is always the parade. We all stand in the square, white armor lined up like teeth, while an officer reads from a datapad about decisive counter-offensives. Behind him, you can see the garrison wall, where the plaster flakes off like snow. He promises the Empire is stronger than ever. The wind steals the last word and throws it in a ditch. The propaganda changes flavor. It used to sell certainty. Now it sells revenge. Hollow clips, starfighter silhouettes, triumphant horns, slogans about a blade in the dark. They never mention who will be holding that blade or what we're getting paid to swing it. The message is clear anyway. Keep your helmet on, keep your mouth shut, and next week will be better. It's been next week for a while. Your armor tells the truth, the posters won't. The right knee plate has a spiderweb crack you keep filling with repair foam. The shoulder bell rattles when you jog, because the new strap is from a different kit. The Vox has a buzz you can't tune out, so your voice comes through like you're talking through a jar. Gear manifests are comedy now. E11 power packs, 2 crates short. Thermal detonators, signed for, never seen. You once received 6 left gauntlets and a note that said make do. The quartermaster shrugged, handed us a laser cutter, and we made do. Welcome to the new Imperial Efficiency Program, also known as Hope You Brought a Multi-Tool. The skirmishes start to blur together. You bounce from a fuel depot with a fancy name to a relay station that's basically a shack with a tall antenna. We trade fire, we take a hill, we hold nothing that matters. Next day, different hill. If there's a grand strategy, it's shy. The new commanders love maps. They stab at sectors with pointers, talk over sectors like they're charms. We'll anchor on Prefspelt, one says, as if Prefspelt is a person you can lean on. Another swears his iron ring plan will choke 3 systems at once. To prove it, he draws a circle in red grease pencil. The circle looks impressive until the supply convoy misses its window and we end up guarding a ring made of fumes. The HoloNet isn't helpful. Half the time the newsfeed is a test pattern. The other half it's someone in a neat uniform insisting we just won 3 battles you've never heard of against enemies no one can name. Your favourite segment is a loop that says normalcy restored, then cuts to a wide shot so carefully framed you can't see the hole in the street to the left. We take bets on whether the anchor blinks. 2 credits say he doesn't. Pay becomes a rumour. Some weeks it arrives late, some weeks it arrives light. One cycle they try to hand you ration chits with a speech about patriotic sacrifice. With credits thin, side hustles bloom. A tech fixes people's heaters for a fee. A pilot ferries parcels off manifest. Your sergeant starts a buy-sell board on the barracks wall. You trade an extra sling for a spool of sealant. You pick up more Joint Ops Army troopers, Navy troopers, planetary defense in mismatched armor, even a few old clone instructors who walk like their bones remember things we never learned. On paper, Joint Ops mean combined strength. In the field, it means 6 comm channels, and no one's sure who has authority to open a blast door. You fall back on the only doctrine that always works. The corporal who brought extra batteries is in charge for the next 10 minutes. You want law? Sector governance is still Tarkin doctrine at heart. Rule from fear. Keep rebellions local. Punish fast. Don't linger. Only now the over-sector grid has gaps. Some Grand Moffs fuse their neighbours into security corridors with names like Burnished Line or Crucible Belt. Sounds sharp. Feels like duct tape. Out on the lanes you see more Victory class than Imperial class hulls. Cheaper to run, easier to hide the scorch marks. Interdictors, rare and jealously hoarded. TIE squadrons show up as mixed flocks. LNs with 2 interceptors flying shepherd. Sometimes a bomber with a panel missing. Painted black so no one notices. We used to count wings, now we count which engines light on the first try. Compnor still throws rallies. Smaller crowds, louder speakers. They hand out armbands and flyers, and a sense that the room is getting smaller. ISB present, careful, scary. The way a door that always opens is scary. You don't know what's behind it. They ask polite questions with sharp edges. We smile, nod, forget how many jokes we had an hour ago. The saddest change is the officers who learned the wrong lessons. The good ones ration fuel, trade favours, keep people fed, and pick fights they can win. The peacocks chase headlines. They love the decapitation strike, the dramatic raid, the announcement that starts with effective immediately. They grab credits from a customs office to fund a raid that makes a great hollow and a bad week for 3 towns downstream. If you're lucky, you get the first type. If you're us, you get both on alternating Tuesdays. Our armour becomes a scrapbook, a scorch mark from a depot we held until the rain put the fire out, a dent from a riot shield that wasn't pointed the right way at the right second. We do get bright spots, a company XO who can conjure parts out of thin air, a medical officer who turns a broom closet into a clinic, a governor who trades us farm fuel for fence repairs and means it. The best day of the month is tools and tea. We set up a fold-out table in the market square, fix hinges, patch hoses, recalibrate a handful of water meters, and drink something that swears it's tea. We run, we brace, we hold, we go home by different streets. One new commander sets up in an old academy and renames it Fort Resilience. He puts banners on the walls and paints the landing grid in fresh white. His first act? Mandatory confidence hours, where we run drills until morale improves. His second act? A broadcast promising a punitive expedition within the fortnight. His third act? Requisitioning our spare parts to dress his parade. We call him Moff Maybe. He lasts a season. The ones who last don't brag. They borrow a tug from the port, barter for diesel, get the hydro plant to cough back to life, and stop promising dates. They say, "We'll try," and make it sound like an order and a hug. Our loyalty tugs in their direction. Not to the eagle crest, but to the person who can make a generator purr. Money, though. Money is a rumour with boots. Pay drifts, then dries. Supply tries to replace it with priority scrip, which the market refuses with a smile. We start getting food direct from farmers. Bread, cheese, something green that looks like it learned fear early. We trade guard shifts for parts. It's messy and honest and a little embarrassing, which is another way to say real knight talks in the barracks change too. We used to complain about officers. Now we inventory futures. Min wants to take her shot at a security contract planetside, sleep in the same bed more than twice a week, shoot less, get paid more. Hob talks about teaching marksmanship to locals, for credits and respect, and the satisfaction of seeing someone hit a can at 300. Skell says he'll open a parts stall and sell us back our own gear at a discount because he's sentimental like that. You keep saying one more posting. You've been on one more posting since the uniform fit better.